Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to take some complex, sometimes dense research and, well, make it really useful for you.
That's the goal.
And today, we're tackling something that feels like a huge contradiction in business, doesn't it? This idea that companies have to grow, but getting too big, it often seems to lead straight into crisis, maybe even, self-destruction.
It's a massive paradox. And yeah, we're diving deep into it today using the work of Professor Senthil Kumar. His research really digs into how things like just sheer size plus this big shift towards what we call the knowledge economy are messing with the old rules about growth.
Messing with them how?
Well, the evidence he presents suggests that for the really big corporations, just continuing to grow bigger and bigger doesn't automatically mean more wealth. It might actually be accelerating this, the state of entropy.
Disorder. Entropy. Okay, sounds serious. So our mission today is to really lay this all out for you. We'll look at the maybe slightly brutal data showing profits going down while assets are ballooning. We'll explore these 4 big limitations that Professor Kumar says constrain all organizations, even living organisms.
Right, the 4 dependencies.
And then we'll get to maybe more hopeful part, a different way to think about sustainable growth, a sort of school of fish strategy.
Exactly, a radical alternative.
Okay, but first things first, you mentioned a distinction in the source material between growth and development. We often use those words like they mean the same thing.
Yeah, and that's a crucial point to start with. Growth really is just about getting bigger, more revenue, more assets, the numbers going up.
Just scale.
Just scale.
Yeah.
Development, though, that's more about getting better. It's about quality, efficiency, maybe innovation. And development might happen with growth, but it doesn't have to. You can grow without really developing.
I see. So growth is kind of essential for profits, for survival even, but if it's just growth without that development piece.
Exactly. Professor Kumar argues it can go 2 ways. Either it leads to cooperation, shared wealth, good things, or it tips into disorder, internal fighting, and yeah, that term again, entropy, that kind of inevitable slide towards chaos in a closed system.
And you're saying the data suggests this isn't just theoretical, that this entropy, this disorder is actually happening in big companies.
The numbers are pretty stark. We looked at the data Professor Kumar compiled on large U.S. public firms from the 1970s all the way to 2013. Decades of data.
And what did it show? Massive growth, I assume?
Oh, massive. Unbelievable, really. The average assets of these firms, it went from around $831 million back in the early 70s to over $18 billion by the 2010s.
$18 billion. From $800 million. That's huge.
Huge. We're talking growth by orders of magnitude in just their asset base.
Right. So, $18 billion in assets on average. That must mean incredible returns for the shareholders, surely. That's the point, isn't it?
Well, that's where the paradox really bites. This is the disconnect. While the size went through the roof, profitability, it kind of tanked.
Tanked? How badly?
Let's look at return on equity, ROE. That basically measures how well a company uses the money shareholders invest to make profit.
Okay, a key metric.
A very key metric. In the early 70s, it was respectable, around 9.4%. By the 2010s, after all that massive asset growth, it had fallen to 4.2%.
Wait, from 9.4 down to 4.2? That's more than half.
More than a 50% drop in how effectively they were generating profit from shareholder equity, despite being vastly bigger.
That is genuinely shocking, that scale of decline. You'd think alarms would be ringing everywhere.
You would think so. And it gets maybe even a bit worse with return on sales, ROS basically, profit margin.
Uh-oh.
That measure actually dipped into negative territory a few times later in the period, like minus 0.9% in the mid-90s. They were losing money on sales, on average, despite their size.
Wow. So the inescapable point is just getting bigger, piling up assets, adding market cap. It stopped translating into better profits for these huge firms.
Pretty much. The link weakened dramatically, sometimes even reversed. Bigness wasn't automatically better anymore. Which just blows up that old rule of thumb, doesn't it? That bigger is always better. So this raises the really big question. Why? Why is growth, which seems so necessary, also so difficult, so self-limiting?
Yeah, and the research suggests it's because organizations, much like, say, biological organisms, aren't free agents acting in a vacuum. They are fundamentally constrained. Professor Kumar outlines these 4 major dependencies, or maybe predicaments is a better word.
Okay, 4 predicaments. Let's walk through them. The first one is time dependence. Sounds simple, but how does time constrain a giant corporation?
Well, It means growth isn't instant. It happens over time. It follows cycles, maturation processes. You can't just, snap your fingers and have a market mature or regulations change or a whole culture adapt to your new product.
Right, takes time.
But there are exceptions, breaches in that steady flow. Things like a big political upheaval or a pandemic like we've seen or some radical new technology. These create what scientists call punctuated equilibrium.
Punctuated equilibrium. Okay, it sounds like a sudden jolt to the system.
Exactly. The normal, slow, steady state gets punctuated, interrupted violently by some big event or innovation, and that forces the whole system, the whole market, onto a new growth path, often really fast. And yeah, companies that can't adapt quickly get left behind.
Okay, makes sense. So that's time. What about the second one, path dependence? The idea that your past dictates your future options.
This one's fascinating and maybe one of the stickiest constraints. It's all about legacy, the technology you've already invested in, the structures you've built.
How so?
The classic example Professor Kumar uses is about railway gauges, the width of the tracks. Apparently, that initial standard width was based way back on the width needed for horse-drawn carts, essentially the width of a horse's backside.
Seriously? Okay.
And that seemingly random historical choice then dictated the size of train carriages for decades.
And the really wild part is how long that echo lasted, right?
That's the path dependence. Fast forward 150 years, and that same track width constraint limited the diameter of the solid rocket boosters NASA could transport by rail to their launch sites.
No way. From a horse's rear end to rocket science.
Pretty much. It shows how past decisions, even seemingly arbitrary ones, lock you into certain pathways and limit your future options. You can't easily escape the ghosts of past choices.
That's a powerful example. Okay, so if path dependence is about history, what about space dependence? Is that just physical limits?
Yeah, basically. Capabilities are bound by the physical space you have available and also the resources within that space, what the source calls resource munificence.
Munificence, like abundance.
Right. Think about building something like the U.S. interstate highway system today. Even if you had unlimited money, trying to build that same network in, say, modern Japan or parts of Western Europe would be incredibly difficult, maybe impossible.
Why? Just too dense.
Exactly. Existing density, lack of available land, the sheer physical space constraints make that kind of large-scale infrastructure project unfeasible or prohibitively expensive. Space matters.
Got it. And the last one, resource dependence. Feels more obvious, maybe?
Yeah.
Need resources to grow.
Absolutely. And it's not just raw materials. It's capital, it's talent, it's even things like regulatory approval or social acceptance. Growth always depends on having enough of the right resources available.
So wrapping these four up, time, path, space, resources, the big picture is, even though companies might feel like they have free will,
they're actually operating within these really significant deep-seated constraints. It means growth planning can't just be about ambition. It has to be systemic, balanced, recognizing these boundaries.
Okay, so we've got these constraints and we've seen the data showing that for big firms, the payoff for getting bigger is dropping. Which leads back to that question. Why did the old playbook, the one that said, get big, integrate everything, why did that suddenly seem to stop working so well, say, around the late 20th century?
Because the whole game changed. The underlying economic logic shifted. We moved out of what Professor Kumar calls the scale economy and into the knowledge economy.
Scale economy versus knowledge economy. Let's break that down. What defined the scale economy approach?
Think traditional heavy industry manufacturing. The winning strategy was consolidation. You wanted vertical integration, owning the whole supply chain, or horizontal integration, buying competitors.
Get big, control everything.
Right. It involved huge capital investment, big factories, lots of assets, high risk maybe, but the payoff came from economies of scale, speed, volume. Until the 90s or so, that generally made you more profitable and gave you market power. Bigness really was the goal and often the safest bet.
But then the knowledge economy arrived and just flipped the script. How?
Technology was the big driver, specifically affordable information technology and communication networks. Suddenly, the cost of sharing information and coordinating activities across distances plummeted.
The internet, cheap computing.
Exactly. It drastically reduced what economists call information asymmetry. Everyone could know more, faster. And it slashed transaction costs, the cost of finding partners, negotiating deals, managing contracts outside your own company walls.
So it became easier and cheaper to work with others, rather than doing everything yourself.
Precisely. This made dispersed, modular ways of organizing not just possible, but often much more efficient and flexible than managing a giant, complex, centralized bureaucracy.
Okay, so what's the key financial shift here? Why did integration become less attractive?
Because in this new knowledge economy, decentralizing, breaking things down into smaller, connected units reduces both the external transaction costs, because IT makes coordination cheaper, and the internal bureaucratic costs, because smaller units are less complex to manage.
I see. So the old advantage of integration, avoiding external transaction costs by doing it all in-house, that advantage shrinks.
It shrinks significantly. Meanwhile, the disadvantages of being huge and integrated, the slow decision-making, the internal politics, the sheer cost of running the bureaucracy, the lack of agility, those costs start to loom much larger. So integration can actually become a high-risk, low-reward strategy.
And we see companies thriving with this dispersed model now, right?
Yeah.
Like the Nike example you mentioned earlier.
Nike is a perfect illustration. They're a global giant, but they don't own rows of massive factories. They operate across, 51 countries, coordinating hundreds of independent contract factories, mainly through their IP systems.
So their value isn't in physical assets.
It's almost entirely in their intellectual capabilities, the brand, the design, the marketing, the R&D. They achieve enormous global reach and growth without enormous physical bigness and the associated bureaucratic drag. That's the knowledge economy in action.
Which brings us right back to the danger zone. If companies ignore this shift and keep pushing for centralized, uniform bigness in this new era, the sources warn they could lose their footing completely.
Yeah, they risk losing their center of gravity, hitting that crisis point. This is where the concept of needing disentropic resources comes in, and that Bakasura warning.
Bakasura, tell us about that. In disentropic, that means fighting disorder, right?
Exactly. Disentropic means order-generating, anti-chaos. The research argues that when organizations push too hard for uniformity and conformity just for the sake of scale, trying to eliminate variety, they actually breed homogeneity. And counterintuitively, this homogeneity can lead to stagnation, turf wars, talented people leaving, basically self-inflicted chaos,
Entropy,
eating itself from the inside out.
which is precisely the story of the Bakasura demon from Indian mythology. It's a powerful metaphor used in the source material.
How does the story go?
Well, Bakasura was this demon who grew absolutely gigantic, so big his hunger became uncontrollable. He started demanding huge amounts of food from nearby villages, terrorizing them. But eventually, his appetite grew so vast. He became cannibalistic. He started consuming everything around him, and ultimately even his own limbs, his own body.
Wow. That's a pretty graphic metaphor for a business strategy discussion.
Yeah.
It is, but it's stark, isn't it? The warning for organizations is clear. Don't become Bakasura. You cannot afford to eat your own stomach in the pursuit of growth. Forcing uniformity, creating internal conflict, driving out diverse talent and ideas just to get bigger. That's organizational cannibalism.
So the antidote is this disentropy, embracing heterogeneity, diversity.
Yes, usually achieved not through forced mergers, but through alliances, partnerships, constellations of different but connected entities. This resource heterogeneity, this diversity, is what fuels innovation and allows for more balanced, continuous growth. It actively counteracts the slide into entropic uniformity.
Okay, so if the old model, the big, slow, centralized shark strategy, is increasingly risky and maybe obsolete for long-term health,
Yeah.
what's the alternative? What's Professor Kumar's proactive disentropic solution?
He calls it the Shoaling strategy, or sometimes the school of fish strategy.
Shoaling, like a school of fish. Okay, what does that mean in organizational terms?
It's about strategically designing your value chain, your assets, your business units as a collection of smaller, disaggregated, often dispersed parts. Think modularization, franchising, joint ventures, strategic alliances,
Breaking the big entity down.
or building it up from smaller, interconnected pieces from the start. The goal is to create these nimble, flexible, but coordinated competitive formations, like a school of fish that can move quickly and react together.
And the big promise here is, you mentioned high growth without bigness.
Exactly. You can achieve significant growth, global reach even, but with less concentration of assets, less centralized bulk, You get the benefits of speed, a local adaptation, maybe entrepreneurial spirit within the units.
While still having the scale benefits of being part of a larger network or brand.
That's the idea. It dramatically reduces the bureaucratic overhead and the risks associated with those huge monolithic structures. It leverages diversity, heterogeneity as a strength, as a source of innovation. That's the disentropy part.
And it flips that old market saying, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Big fish eat small fish.
Completely. With shoaling, the coordinated, agile school of fish, quick, specialized, maybe smaller units working together, can actually challenge, outmaneuver, and sometimes even eat the big, slow, lumbering shark. Speed and collective intelligence beat sheer size.
Are there real-world companies actually doing this, making this shoaling structure work?
Oh, definitely. The research points to several. Take Nucor, the steel company.
Right, you mentioned them. Huge company, but operates differently.
Hugely successful, multi-billion-dollar steelmaker. But they operate something like 90 distinct business units, largely independently. It's structured like a federation or a family of small firms, is how some describe it. And get this. Their corporate headquarters has only about 95 people.
95 people running a multi-billion-dollar company.
Running the holding company, yes. They push autonomy way down to the local units. That's classic strategic disaggregation, classic shoaling.
Okay, Nucor and steel. What about tech? Any examples there?
Well, the massive restructuring of Google into Alphabet is arguably a move in this direction.
How so?
By creating Alphabet as the parent holding company, they formally separated the core profitable businesses like Google Search and Ads from the more speculative, high-risk innovation ventures. The moonshots like Waymo, self-driving cars, or Verily, life sciences, which were originally under Google X or Nest.
So it lets the smaller, riskier bets operate more freely.
Exactly. It allows those innovation units to function with more independence, perhaps more agility, without being potentially stifled or slowed down by the bureaucracy or the quarterly profit pressures of the giant core business. It keeps the school of fish nimble within the larger structure.
Interesting. And the source mentioned the Japanese company too, Kyocera.
Kyocera Ceramics, yes. They use a system they explicitly call the amoeba management system.
Amoeba management.
Yeah. This large global company is organized into over 3,000 tiny, highly empowered, customer-facing units they call amoebas. Each one functions almost like a mini business. The whole point is to maximize market responsiveness and entrepreneurial drive right down at the lowest levels across their entire global operation.
3,000 amoebas. That's radical decentralization. It really paints a picture of finding stability and sustainable growth, not in just being massive and uniform, but in being fluid, interconnected, and diverse.
That seems to be the core message. The ultimate aim isn't just growth for growth's sake, but finding a balance. Growth that's steady, sustainable, and contributes to both, a high standard of living and a good quality of life, now and for the future.
So the deep dive for you, the listener, isn't just about looking at those declining ROE charts, though they are important. It's maybe about recognizing that growth is a bit like fire. Essential, powerful, but needs careful management. The old ways of rewarding just sheer size seem to be failing. And if you want long-term sustainability, maybe being part of a smart, agile school of fish is actually much better than trying to be the biggest, slowest shark in the ocean.
Which leads us to a final kind of provocative thought for you to chew on, drawn from the research.
Okay, let's hear it.
The sources suggest that strategically breaking up a large corporation into smaller, more focused units, maybe even listing some of those units separately on the stock market while keeping them under a common brand or board, could actually result in a higher total valuation for all those individual pieces compared to the single giant firm.
So the market itself might actually prefer and reward this kind of strategic breakup over just monolithic size.
It's a question worth asking. Is the stock market starting to explicitly favor strategic disaggregation? Maybe something to think about the next time you see news of a major corporate split or spinoff.